Welcome back to the channel, guys, and today I got something special for you. Now, I've been reading a lot of Reddit and Discord posts, and I've noticed that a lot of people are complaining about how strong aliens are, and I figured, why don't we make a video about the weak spots and just in general the game mechanics on how things work, and hopefully that should help you guys to fight aliens one-on-one, especially when you're going against a real player. Now, first, I gotta thank our main developer of the game, Silica, Drum, because I could not do it without his help and his information that he provided us for this video. So first, before we jump into the video, I would like to talk about some of the indicators that you're gonna see on the screen, especially when you have the cheats on. When you're shooting at the aliens, you're gonna be able to see somewhat indicators for the impact and explosion, and also you'll see a formula, which is I'm also gonna be able to dive in later on if you guys like the kind of information and want to know more, and we can definitely take a deeper look into that mechanics of the game. But for now, we're gonna talk about the five indicators that you're gonna see. First, you got that green penetration marker, and you got also blue circle, it's a detonation marker. The red X is a destroyed standard impact, no explosion round, and then you got the yellow marker is deformed projectile impact that usually hit before and was deformed and then bounced again. And then you have that white star, usually means it's a ricochet. So let's dive in. Alrighty, so here we are at our testing range. First up, we are gonna jump into the scout, and as you can see, I got a couple units of each to kind of guys show you around a little bit more and see how things go. So first we got scout. Now with the scout, it's basically uses like a 9mm rounds, as I've mentioned before, and on the regular crab, if you actually turn the cheats on and you press P, when you shoot, you actually can see the damage. And that's how we're gonna test this out. So the basic crab, legs, back is your standard damage. And the mouth is gonna be your 100% damage. Everywhere else is reduced. And in case you guys don't know, also, the crabs have 600 health. And they also have 6 HP per 3 seconds regen. Okay, next up we got the horn crab. Horn crab is basically exactly the same thing. However, they start out with 900 HP and they regenerate 9 HP per 3 seconds. Fun fact about the crabs, the horn crab is that its basically functionality is the same as the regular crab. However, if you shoot into these horns in the back, as you can see with the 9mm or the green tracer, we can also call it, it actually does no damage, any of these spikes. So you definitely want to make sure that you're shooting in an appropriate area as well. Legs, same as the regular crab, doesn't really do the full damage, except if you shoot in the mouth. Next, we got Impaler. Impalers don't really have a weak spot. They just overall take a base damage. At least with the scout gun. Now remember, it's that green tracer, so that also includes, I believe that we got our regular quad. And if I'm not mistaken, I think everybody else got the red tracers, which is your rifle ammunition. Now, here we got a hunter. And this is actually very interesting too. If you noticed, when you shoot at the legs, that's where all the armor is, okay? And we got... Oh, I'm sorry, did I mention? I don't think I mentioned that Impaler start out with the 600 HP and they regenerate 6 HP per 3 seconds as well. Okay, next we got Hunter. Hunter starts out with the 4500 HP and they regenerate 45 HP per 3 seconds as well. I believe the versus the scouts, you know, usually nobody really uses the scouts to fight the hunters in general. You know, you at this point you're hopefully gonna have a rifleman to fight in the beginning, so you'll be doing the damage. But just for the testing, I wanted to show you a little bit more. So with the scout and just the hunter in general, the weak spot would be this back piece right here. It glows at night, and it has like a slight glow, kind of like the behemoth. So that's the weak part. Okay, that's where you do, for the hunter, you do ×3 damage multiplier on this area right here. Everywhere else, these bony rocks area, you basically gonna do no damage with the light ammunition, or very less significant damage. However, the mouth area is your full damage, and so are these tentacles. So if you are playing as in any of the infantries, you definitely want to aim for the mouth, the tentacles, or if you can aim in the back piece right here. Okay? However, you do have to watch out for these armor on its mouth. You actually end up, it's almost like shielding the weak spots. Not the weak spot, but the mouth area. And as you can see, actually if I pause, you can see that some of the shots completely bounced, ricochet, or would just take no damage at all from that. Okay, so definitely don't want to shoot at the legs. I mean, unless you shoot him in the toe, that doesn't have, actually, it looks like it doesn't have a hitbox in that. The mouth area, tentacles, and then you want to shoot this area. Next up, we got behemoth. Behemoth is basically the same way. You got a lot of the areas. Claws take no damage, they ricochet. Pretty much the whole entire area is armored as well. But before we get into that stuff, the behemoth also start out with a 10,000 HP, and they regenerate 100 HP per 3 seconds. So in overall, versus the scout, behemoth takes no damage anywhere except the weak spot. And the weak spot for behemoth is actually does same thing as the hunter, ×3 amount of damage. So it multiplies the damage by 3. So as you can see in the bottom right corner, you could potentially kill the behemoth with the scout if you actually work together. And I feel like that's where it kind of comes in play. You gotta be able to work with your teammates to be able to actually do damage to these units, especially if you start out with a scout. Next up, we got Scorpion. Scorpion start out with a 12,000 HP. They regenerate 120 HP per 3 seconds. These are just kind of like the tips for you guys. And versus the scout, it's the same thing. No damage at all anywhere in the body. Now, another note to kind of keep in mind, joints don't do any damage at all. So you definitely don't want to shoot at these joints. However, the weak spot that Scorpion has is the tail. Not the front of the tail, not the back of the tail, but these glowing tips on the side. That's the only way you can actually damage the Scorpion. You have to hit him on the side right here, and you do ×4 damage to these spots. And everywhere else, you do no damage. So just keep that in mind. Next, the very big one, we got Goliath. The Goliath with a scout is pretty much exactly the same thing as a Scorpion and Behemoth. No damage anywhere. However, the Goliath, it does start out with a 30,000 HP, and they regenerate 300 HP per 3 seconds. However, if you look at the spot right here, that's the only weak spot for the Goliath. Not the face, not the joints, not the legs. This spot right here. And you're going to be, guys, very surprised. There is a visual and sound cue when you hit the Goliath into the weak spot. Especially when it's not when you do with the small ammunition, but when you do with like a heavier units. I believe the commando and like any of the vehicles, when you shoot in this weak spot, you can actually get a visual cue that you're hitting in that spot. And as you can see, look at the bottom health. As a scout, it does about ×4 damage as well, multiplier. Maybe even a little bit more. I'm kind of curious if it's actually like ×4.1 or 2. But as you can see, And if I'm not mistaken, from my testing early on that I've done off the screen, that it actually took about 8 full clips to kill a Goliath if you don't miss any shots. So that we got that. Okay, next we got Wasp. Wasp have only 300 health. So let me just double check with my notes and make sure that, yep, they got 300 health and they regen 3 HP per every 3 seconds. No weak spots at all. However, something interesting to note about Wasp, the wings, when they're flying, even looks like when they're not flying, the wings take no damage. So do not shoot at the wings at all. It almost serves like it's like there's no hitbox, and if there is, it just kind of bounces off. It doesn't even register. Another thing is too, these mouth claws that it's got, they actually very small amount. They do absorb just a little bit damage. If you hit it just right, you do like 2 damage instead of actually like 22 or 27. But they're pretty weak, so you definitely just want to shoot them in general. Same thing goes for the dragonflies. Dragonflies have 300 HP and regen 3 health per 3 seconds, and they have no weak spot, and they take no damage to their wings. As you can see, it just goes through it or it just bounces off in general. But it's the same thing, you just basically can't kill it easily with a scout. Here we come to another flying unit right here. Now the mouth definitely has armor too. You definitely don't want to shoot at that, and you don't want to really shoot at these bones in the back. Pretty much any bone looking, kind of like, I guess like concrete looking, bone looking areas on any of the alien units serve as an armor, or you basically just take, they take no damage, especially with like early on units like Scout and like Rifleman and higher, you end up taking a very reduced damage. However, the weak spot for these dudes is going to be right between these rib cages right here. It also glows at night. Same thing goes from the top. That area in the top right there, above the floppy area, that's also that's going to be your weak spot as well. Another big thing to note, these wings take no damage at all. So keep that in mind too as well when you're firing. And that goes for any of the units that you're going to be using against these guys. So definitely want to aim on the side from the top, or you want to aim on between these rib cages. Now Firebike has 9 KHP, and they regenerate about actually I don't think I got that one down, but I think it was about what was it? I think it was about 90 HP per 3 seconds. I think that's what it was. But yeah, you definitely want to avoid shooting these bonies. So definitely try to hit these if you can. And they also have a visual cue when they get hit. And also Behemoth does as well too. I believe I forgot to mention that. So we got that. And then of course we got our big main units that you probably will never fight. You never fight against the Scout with the Defiler. You're not even going to be probably close. But it's basically the same idea. Mouth is not a weak spot. These spores in the back are the weak spots. Instead of shooting in the mouth, you definitely want to shoot the tentacles instead. Same thing goes with the Colossus. You want to shoot at the underneath area, or the eye is the weak spot. And the top shelf does no damage. So you definitely want to keep that in mind with no matter which unit you're using. And that's I believe all we got. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Defiler. So Defiler start out with a 30k HP, so 30,000 HP, regen 300 HP per 3 seconds. And the weak spots do about 1.5 damage multiplier. And then we got Colossus, which starts out at 150,000 HP, and it also regenerates 1,500 HP per 3 seconds. The top shells, like I mentioned, takes no damage, and the weak spot is only the eye right here, and it takes about 2.5 or almost 3 times 3 damage multiplier in the eye. So, and that should cover the Scout. Next up, we got a Rifleman. A Rifleman is basically the same idea as a Scout. However, as you can see, it uses I'm trying to turn this off. It's not letting me. I think I have to wait. maybe. Okay, yep. The scouts using red tracers. That's what they're using. Yep. And same idea. Basically, you get a multiplier in the mouth, the back. Horns in this case do take damage. However, it is a reduced damage. From my calculation, you take about, I would almost say, about 50 or 40% damage reduction when you shoot those spots that are armored and the units. Impaler, same thing. You do get that visual cue that you get hit. You know, same with those guys. You can see them jumping up a little bit more when they get hit. Same thing goes for the hunter. You take some of the shots bounce off, and you take the normal damage. The top shelf right here is, you gotta definitely watch out for this one. This takes to almost no damage, or it just bounces off. Mouth is also the weak spot. Not the weak spot, but that's where you take the regular damage. Gotta watch out for the horns. So are the tentacles, and then we got the back as well. That's your weak spot. Behemoth. Now, in this case, with the rifleman, you take very little amount of damage as a behemoth against the rifleman. Claws the same way too. Some of the shots completely bounce off. As you can see, it's like reduced damage. We're talking about 40-50% reduction when you go one-on-one against this thing, no matter where you shoot, except the back. So you definitely want to be shooting this back part when you go against these bigger units. Same thing with the core scorpion. You gotta shoot only these sides, the glowing parts. That's the only time that you can actually do significant damage to the point that you can actually kill them. Snipers also work really well against this. Next up, we got Goliath. Same dealio, basically. Any of the armored parts do no damage at all. And then underneath, as you can see, we're doing a lot of damage. You can definitely put up a fight if you can hit the spot. And hopefully the Goliath is not going to try to kill you in the meantime. Very helpful. And of course, you know, we already talked about these guys. Not very, don't really put up the fight against the wasp or dragonfly. I mean, very easy to kill as a rifleman. You just gotta hit the shots. And I think that's where it really becomes like, you know, are the players trying to avoid your shots? Do you have to lead your shots? How far is the unit away from you? Same thing here. Mouth does take reduced damage, or almost no damage. It bounces off some of them. And then we got the weak spots as well, doing a lot of damage to the weak spots. And then the flops still take no damage. And then of course we got our tentacles here on the defiler. Mouth takes almost no damage or reduced damage. You can tell by those zeros. And the weak spots are the spores. Now the area around the spores, those vents looking thingies, they are armored as well. You take no damage or they just bounce off at all. And same goes for the Colossus. Weak spot on the regular damage goes underneath anywhere, underneath the shell. Shell takes no damage, bounce off. And the eye is your weak spot. And that covers the rifleman. All right, next we got marksman. But marksman basically uses the Balterium type of ammunition. Now, if you're not aware, there's pretty much like 3 ammunition types for at least for the infantry. We got green tracers, which is your 9mm, kind of the lower decided damage. You also see that on the light quad as their main gun. The next up we got the rifleman, which is like more of a red color. That's kind of your 50 cal, more like a rifle ammunition. Also seen as a secondary on heavy armored car and also, I believe you see that on the hover tank as well. And then we got Balterium, which is your commandos and the marksmen use. Now, they don't really have any kind of like negative effect when you're shooting parts in the limbs of the aliens. A lot of them actually almost like gets ignored, like all the armor that they have. So as we can see, for example, if we have a horn crab and I shoot him in the horn, he takes a very small, if any at all, reduced damage compared to the regular crabs. As you can see, we can pretty much shoot in the mouth and it does 500 damage, and then if we shoot in the head as well, it takes the same amount of damage. So it doesn't really matter where you shoot as long as you hit them. Same goes when you go against like the flying units as well too. They can be easily just one tapped with the marksman. You just gotta hit them once. Now next we got the hunter as well. Hunter, like we mentioned earlier, pretty much all the armor, it doesn't matter where you shoot him, you do about the same damage. It's about 477 with the marksman. Really depends on how far you are, because remember, the distance definitely impacts on your damage, but we're talking about single numbers as well too. Now if you shoot in these two, as you can see, it does 498 versus 477. However, you definitely want to be shooting in these weak spots when you get a chance, because you're doing 3 times as much damage. Same goes for the behemoth as well. Everything pretty much takes damage compared to your rifleman and scout, as we've seen earlier in the video, and you definitely want to go for the weak spot. And I believe the same thing we can say about this guy too. Pretty much same story. Definitely want to shoot the weak spot, and like I mentioned before, there you go, that's hitting the weak spot. You want to hit the rib cage up top or below, and that's going to be their weak spots. Same thing goes for the Goliath as well too. That's what you want to aim at, especially if you can hit them. I know it's a little bit hard because they're moving and you're not going to be in this kind of control environment, but that's what you want to aim for and try to hit, because you will be surprised, especially we're going to get into the vehicles and talk more about them in another video. You will be surprised how much damage you can do to these Goliath if you can hit it just right. And that should cover the marksman. All right, and next we got our heavy. Now with this unit, you're gonna be able to see actually a couple numbers. You're gonna see red, which is your impact damage, and then you're gonna see some yellow numbers, which are your explosion damage. Now, as you know, some of these rockets, they don't fly always straight, so we're gonna try to do our best to actually hit those targets. But if I hit it right here, and of course it went right past them, as you can see that we did initial 600 damage on impact, and then everything around it took the yellow numbers is your splash / explosion damage. Now of course you can still hit weak spots with this unit. However, it's a little bit more difficult considering that you don't really control the path that these rockets go, as you can see. So you better just kind of aim for the general mass of the enemy, unless you can just get really close, and as you can see right there, midpoint 600, and then we had almost like 1500 damage. Unless you're gonna hit exactly in that spot. And if I pause it right here, you see a targeted point did 1100 damage, and then the explosion damage actually gave an additional 500 damage to the limbs next to it. And I think that's how really it's been working. You basically shoot in a spot, and then right there, yep, 980, and then you got 480 is your splash damage to the units. You at this point, when you're fighting as using a heavy unit, you definitely want to go for the weak spot if you can. Obviously with the scorpions it's a little bit tougher, but oh wow, as you can actually see, it can do initial damage on the impact of 776, and then the explosion actually multiplier was applied to the weak spot. So that's actually something good to know. You can actually damage them while you are shooting at them. You can damage them by hitting them directly, and then the explosion can be applied as a multiplier. So honestly, I just found out that out while doing this for you guys video. So yes, you can do a direct hit with the rocket, and then the explosion will be also multiplied to the weak point as well. So I'm gonna resume this. I'm gonna try to recreate that again if we can. So it seemed like, not sure how that usually works. I'm gonna see here. Yeah, even though I'm shooting at it, so it doesn't happen always. And of course the rocket's completely missing as I'm trying to shoot it. So the chances of you to really hitting that spot is gonna be, looks like, completely minimal, unless you just get a lucky hit. Oh, that did 2,000 damage. Interesting. 4,000 damage to the weak spot, and then 2,000 damage to the explosion as well. So we're talking about 6,000 damage in the right area. There you go, guys. $760 direct damage and 2,000 looks like the weak point. So that's pretty much confirms it, that when you're using heavy on a Goliath, most likely the explosion is going to be applied to the weak spot. Because you can see the animation as well, and the Q on the unit when you hit him, that it actually getting hit in a weak point. Interesting. Same thing goes for these guys as well too, depending on where you hit. And of course we got our defilers, and we got our Colossus too. However, of course it's going to be very hard to hit in direct hit into the eye, unless the the rockets deviates right into the eye. And there you have it, guys. All right, next we got our Commando. Now, it's something actually interesting, because Commando is using the Balterium ammunition, so that's kind of like your energy weapon. Now, idea is basically the same. Considering how weak these units are, you do a lot of damage, and the reduction is actually, I noticed, is not as big compared to the other units. If you actually look, I'm shooting 190 in the leg, and then the mouth is end up being 200 damage. So that it's about a couple just percent reduction compared to the weak. So I wouldn't almost really worried about, except you're shooting this in the shell of the horn crab, and that does very reduced damage. It's like you do 139 damage compared to the legs was 190, and then the mouth is 200. Same goes for these guys. Very easy to kill with this guy. And then same thing goes for the hunters. However, in this case, we're using Balterium ammunition. The rounds actually penetrate the armor, and you don't really have to worry about it as much. Whoops, I actually killed him this time. Yeah, you take pretty much very reduced amount of like the penalty is very reduced on the Commando. Same thing here. All the armor spots now actually take damage. The weak spot, you can actually see the visual and the sound cue. You can hear that. So Commando and above has a visual cue and sound when you shoot in their weak spots. You go between anywhere in the body, you're shooting for 140 to almost 200 damage. And then when you shoot in the tail, you do 800 damage. But you have to hit these glowing parts. It's very important. Same goes for the Goliath. The front, however, oh yes, that's right. I'm sorry, I completely forgot about this one. The front legs do almost no damage. Very, very low amount of damage. Compared to the face, you do 120, or the front claws do 20 damage. However, the back legs do more damage, just like the face. And even the top shelf takes more damage. However, here we go, as you can hear. He does a lot, he takes a lot of damage like this. Same thing goes for these guys as well. Mouth does take more damage than any other unit. And then the weak spot is between the rib cage. And then we got defilers shooting even the armored area. You do about 170. Remember, guys, this is also depending on the range too. Your angle, your range, how far you are from the unit, and of course, you know how often you're gonna really fight this unit right here, right? You're not gonna be ever this close with the commando, but if you are, at least you know what to do. Even shooting tentacles is better than shooting it in the face. So you know it's 30 to 40 damage increase. I mean it's not a lot, but it's something. And I mean, especially if you're trying to count that kind of like last push, trying to teleport to the unit and finish it off, that might be the way to do it. Same thing goes for the Colossus. Eye takes 500 damage, and then underneath area it takes 200, and the shells actually completely bounce off. And there you have it. We got a commando. And there you have it, guys. Hopefully that information was very useful for you. And you know, some of you might even say, Kazakh, how would I fight as a scout, you know, against such elite units? I mean, what would be the point of fighting at that time? Or you might be in a vehicle, or you might be a rifleman or commando. And that's why I was just kind of wanted to bring the attention to, you know, the information about the game, that you still could do damage with some of the early on units if you come up, you know, across them. But I hope this way you can actually focus on the specific areas where you gotta shoot, instead of just kind of shooting in the face of, let's say, Scorpion or Hunter or the Bones, and then you might wonder, well, why am I not doing enough damage? You know, even if you're a rifleman or a commando or like a sniper rifle guy and you're trying to shoot the Scorpion and you wonder, why am I not actually doing a significant amount of damage? How can I kill the unit? So hopefully this video was actually useful for you guys and will help you and kind of maybe even make you slow down a little bit to think about how to approach the fight when you come one-on-one with the Scorpion or some of the bigger units that we mentioned in this video. Now, I also will be making more videos just like this, but only going to be using the armored units, such as our light vehicles and our tanks, and even some of our flying units. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below. Hit the follow, hit the like button. Let me know what you think. Did you find this information useful? If you did, you know, comment below, and I appreciate you guys' feedback, because every bit it counts and it helps. And once again, I want to thank Drum for helping me with this video, in all the information that he was able to provide me, so I can get all this information together and present it to you guys. So I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching.